Series 2 begins by quietly introducing the fractured reality surrounding Victoria and Bethan Price. During a tea party, Bethan brings a magazine filled with sexual discussions that makes Victoria uncomfortable. When Ben Berkman unexpectedly interrupts, the girls quickly hide it before he offers them drinks. Once they're alone again, Bethan promises she will never bring the magazine back. In the present day, Jeanette Kilburn wakes beside Sophia after spending the night together. At the same time, Victoria appears with Bethan before scratching her own arm and screaming. Later, Jeanette is startled awake by a loud noise. She discovers broken glass downstairs, cuts her hand while cleaning it up, and quietly leaves. She later calls Sophia to explain why she disappeared so suddenly and says she hopes they can meet again. After Jeanette leaves, someone using either Sophia or Victoria's identity draws a heart using Jeanette's blood. Back at home, Jeanette struggles to balance work and family. Alex questions her after she misses another planned dinner, while Jojo talks excitedly about visiting Freddy's and going to a game with Uncle Lou. At work, Mike Dilliston advises Jeanette to stay away from the Berman investigation because of the growing danger, but she refuses. She remains convinced Victoria Berman is still somewhere on the estate. Her instincts prove correct. Jeanette discovers blood-covered pigs before entering a barn where the animals are feeding on a man's body. Inside a nearby freezer, she finds several more corpses. Eva Ander confirms there are multiple victims, including Vincent Dwyer, while several others appear to be asylum seekers. Jeanette immediately orders every building on the property searched as the investigation expands into one of the largest murder inquiries they have ever faced. Sophia continues experiencing disturbing blackouts while cutting apart old photographs that constantly shift between images of herself and Victoria. Meanwhile, Mike and Jeanette inspect fighting cages where evidence suggests young boys were forced into brutal fights. A recovered tooth reinforces that theory. Protective custody is ordered for David White and Peter Drake, while concern also grows over Mary Berkman's disappearance. As the investigation grows, Verity Pound joins the case and expands the task force. Jeanette explains that at least 15 victims have already been connected to the investigation. She also outlines Victoria's childhood, revealing years of abuse at the hands of her father, while Carl Lowry and Vincent Dwyer may also have played major roles. The team believes Victoria has been communicating through the placement of the bodies themselves. Elsewhere, Harriet continues therapy with Sophia while grieving her missing daughter, whose body has never been recovered. Victoria repeatedly appears to Sophia, quoting the biblical story of Legion and insisting that they are not alone. At the same time, David White discovers a tape recorder discussing control before pouring blood into a glass, while Mary Berman is revealed to be alive but imprisoned. Another shocking discovery follows when investigators break through a hidden wall and uncover a human hand. Flashbacks reveal Victoria's childhood under the control of Carl Lowry and Bertram Lowry. Carl openly tells his father that Victoria refuses to obey, while Bertram insists Carl will eventually control her. The abuse becomes even more disturbing when Victoria is shown bleeding in a swimming pool. Peter Drake is brought in for questioning, but denies any involvement in either the murders or the underground fights. Jeanette believes he is actually in danger and wants him protected, but his solicitor secures his release. Sophia continues describing terrifying encounters with Victoria, including visions connected to pigs and biblical references. Eva's forensic work reveals that the earliest victims had lidocaine in their systems, while Vincent Dwyer remained fully conscious during his death. Attention then shifts toward a body discovered inside the church crypt. Forensic evidence shows the victim was a teenage girl who drowned many years earlier before being hidden inside the church. A receipt leads investigators to Beecham College, where Jeanette requests student records stretching back several years. Sophia also seeks medical help after her worsening blackouts, but even after therapy her condition continues deteriorating. Jeanette's personal life collapses further as Alex suggests she should leave the family home for JoJo's sake. Soon afterward, Peter Drake is murdered when David White shoots him before demanding another victim who knows too much. Investigators also begin questioning whether one body recovered from the freezer may actually belong to a woman rather than a man. More flashbacks show Victoria confiding in Bethan about reporting her abusive father and preparing to see a psychiatrist. Bethan warns her to be careful. Eva later confirms that one freezer victim is indeed female. She suffered years of physical abuse before drowning in chlorinated swimming pool water, and forensic evidence indicates she was assaulted by multiple men before her death. The church victim is finally identified as Bethan Price, Victoria's childhood friend who disappeared after attending the same school. Meanwhile, Jeanette and Mike discover Peter Drake's body and immediately suspect someone is trying to frame Victoria for the murder. Sophia confronts the captive Mary Berman over failing to protect her from years of abuse, while Mary's response only deepens the emotional wounds between them. Victoria's former therapist explains that Victoria developed dissociative identity disorder as a survival mechanism. Different personalities emerged to cope with overwhelming trauma, including a non-human crow identity. The therapist also explains that abusers can deliberately manipulate and shape alternate personalities for their own benefit. David White continues watching Sophia while Victoria secretly visits the morgue to see Bethan's body before fleeing when confronted. At the same time, Reverend Charles reveals that archaeological work carried out years earlier may explain how Bethan's body remained hidden for so long. Jeanette also discovers that Bethan had lived at Ledford House after attending Beecham College on a bursary before eventually disappearing. Eleanor Lowry publicly confirms decades of abuse carried out by her father, grandfather, and Carl Lowry. She also reveals that girls were taken to parties involving the Bergman family, finally confirming that Victoria had been telling the truth about the abuse all along. Sophia later attempts to take Mary to confess everything, but David White intercepts them. He fatally stabs Mary before kicking her into the water. Sophia manages to scratch his face and escape while Mary's body floats away. Another flashback reveals the tragedy that claimed Bethan's life. During a dive into a lake, Bethan never resurfaces after attempting to retrieve black silt from the bottom. A second girl dives in after her and also disappears beneath the water. Jeanette confirms that the body recovered from the river is Mary Berman. As investigators search Victoria's rented property, they discover a shrine dedicated to Bethan along with evidence showing Victoria secretly maintained the location for years. Surveillance footage confirms Victoria imprisoned Mary there. Forensic evidence finally identifies the female freezer victim as Rachel Fisher. Her former boyfriend Liam Draper explains that Rachel disappeared after attending one of the notorious house parties connected to Ledford House. Eleanor later identifies objects from Victoria's home and recalls the horrifying gatherings where girls were drugged before wealthy men visited bedrooms using coded knocks. Sophia's medical scan shows no physical illness, but buried memories finally begin returning. She remembers carrying Bethan's body away from the lake before placing her inside the church and gently washing her feet. The series reaches its biggest revelation when Victoria visits Sophia and explains that Sophia herself is not a separate woman at all. Victoria tells her that Sophia is an apparently normal personality created inside her own mind. She explains that she built this identity using memories of an earlier therapist named Sophia Craven, so she could continue treating herself while remaining unaware of her true identity. As investigators uncover Victoria's medical records, the original Dr. Sophia Craven confirms the years of abuse, Victoria's pregnancy in 2007, and that Madeline was almost certainly Victoria's daughter. She also explains that personalities such as Mary Magdalene and the Crow were all created as survival mechanisms during years of systematic abuse. The task force rushes to Sophia's flat, only to discover walls covered with photographs of Madeline. Jeanette finds a note reading that Sophia loves her before confronting Victoria nearby. Victoria drops a tape recorder into the water before escaping once again. Flashbacks reveal Catherine Sterling exploiting Victoria's pregnancy while treating the unborn child as something to possess. On a beach, Victoria remembers Ben Bergman pushing her down the stairs while she speaks softly to Madeline. David White is eventually found dead in the woods. Jeanette gathers the team and explains that Sophia Craven is actually Victoria's primary identity. She believes Victoria placed Bethan's body in the church, but did not kill her. The investigation also uncovers an enormous network connecting shell companies, hotels housing asylum seekers, powerful lawyers, Ledford House, and influential families responsible for decades of abuse and exploitation. Jeanette's relationship with Sophia leads to her suspension from duty, but the investigation continues. Victoria eventually arrives at the old property where much of her childhood trauma began. Catherine welcomes her and starts another twisted version of the shopping game from Victoria's childhood. This time Victoria refuses to remain a victim. As memories of the swimming pool return, she electrocutes the people gathered inside, ending the cycle of abuse that had controlled her life for years. Jeanette reaches the property and discovers Catherine dead, while several children from Ledford House explain that a blonde woman brought them there and promised to return. Nearby, Victoria stands over the bodies with a knife and tells Jeanette that talking no longer works because everything has become much bigger than either of them. Inside another building, Piers Sterling opens fire and wounds Jeanette in the leg. Victoria disarms him, and Jeanette insists he should face justice in court. But when Piers mentions Madeline and claims Victoria was always his favorite, Victoria finally reaches her limit and shoots him in the head. The series ends quietly after the violence. Victoria stays beside the wounded Jeanette, asking her not to leave before disappearing once more. In the closing moments, Victoria speaks about a new chapter beginning. She boards a vehicle and is finally seen standing peacefully on a beach with Madeline, bringing an emotional end to a story that exposed decades of abuse, manipulation, and hidden identities while leaving Victoria's future open to interpretation.